Hello, it's Fiona Murray here from WLM St Luke's. Here is another of our short videos on universal credit. This one is on, once you've got your account up and running, how to make it work for you and what to do if you hit any problems. Hope you find it useful. Thanks. So if you're working and claiming universal credit because you're on a low income, this is a bit different to the old system. There's no restriction on the number of hours you can work. It used to be 16 hours. Now it's all about the money, how much you make. So the more you make, the less universal credit you get, to the point where if you make enough money, then your universal credit will stop altogether. It's more streamlined in that the tax office and the DWP talk to one another. So it means you don't have to keep telling the DWP what you're earning. The tax office tell them, provided you're paying tax, national insurance, that you're on the books. This is quite helpful because it means that if your wages go up and down a bit, your universal credit will go up and down a bit, but a month behind. Bear that in mind. But it means that you don't get into a position of being overpaid universal credit, which did used to happen with the old tax credit system, which was really unhelpful. Sometimes you could end up running up a big overpayment that they then wanted back, and you were unaware that this was even happening. You also get to keep a little bit more of your earnings under this system compared to the old system. Now, one thing to be aware of is that universal credit works very smoothly if you're paid calendar monthly. If you're paid on the same day every month, it all works fine. It gets complicated and actually unfair if you are paid four-weekly, so you get paid every 4 weeks so the date moves around, or if you're paid fortnightly or weekly, because the way our calendar works, it means there will be some times of the year when you get you get extra payments in a calendar month. So universal credit thinks, oh, you're earning loads of money, and it will cut what it gives you, or maybe even stop it altogether. And that is a real flaw in the system that is unfair. So if you have the chance to ask to be paid calendar monthly, that can make life a lot easier. Also, if not, then be aware that this will happen sometimes, and to make plans, put money aside to protect you. There is a bit of flexibility that's possible within universal credit that some people don't know about. So, for example, the way it works is that, unlike the old system, where your rent would have been paid by housing benefit to your landlord, under universal credit they want it to be like wages, getting you ready for work, so they give you your rent money and expect you to pay your rent yourself. Fine. But there might be circumstances where that is a problem. For example, if there's someone in the household with a problem with gambling or drugs or alcohol, that might mean that having more than £1,000 in your hand in a month is bad news, because that money might get spent on other things and not spent on the rent. Or perhaps you find budgeting very difficult and you get overwhelmed and you can't manage to pay your rent regularly. So the most important thing of all is that your home is safe. So you can ask for an alternative payment arrangement to have the rent paid straight to the landlord, so it doesn't have to come to you. And that means that you can be assured that the rent's getting paid every month and your house is safe. Also, you can ask to be paid more frequently than monthly. So if trying to stretch money over a month is difficult and you find budgeting hard, maybe you've got debts and it's just too hard to juggle, again you can ask to have your money paid more frequently so that you can manage it a bit more easily. And for couples, usually the money goes to one half of the couple into a bank. You can ask for the money to be split between you. Although if the reason you need that is because of any financial or emotional abuse, that is going to be quite difficult for you to ask for that to be split with your partner being aware. So that is again another potential flaw in the system. If you need to ask for an alternative payment arrangement, it might help if you get some evidence of your vulnerabilities or debts that mean you need your money in a different way. Your work coach might take your word for it, but it doesn't harm to have a letter from a support worker or something, maybe just to show them why you need it. So within Universal Credit, you'll be put into one of 4 groups according to your situation and your ability to work. So one group is where you can work full time, you have no responsibilities to care for anyone, you can just look for a job full time, straight and simple. Next, you might be put in a group where you've got a limited ability to work. Perhaps you've got caring responsibilities for children, picking up from school or elderly relatives. So they'll say you have a limited ability to work. And there's another group where, again, you've got a limited ability to work. You're not quite ready to be working full time, but you're close to being able to work full time. You're preparing for work. And finally, perhaps you have a long-term health condition or disability. It means, or even a short-term health condition. It means at the moment they're not expecting you to work at all. So there'll be no pressure on you to be job hunting because they understand that you're not able to do that. You will be asked to sign something called a Claimant Commitment. It's like a contract between you and the job centre about your circumstances, about how much you're going to look for work, what kind of work you're going to do, how many hours a week you can work. That is agreed at the beginning of the universal contract being set up, and it's important that you get this right, that you are honest with the work coach if there are limitations to you being able to work, because this is the contract they kind of hold you to if they're going to sanction you down the line and say, oh, you didn't do what you said you'd do. So it's important that you get this, that you give as much information as you can at the beginning so this is fair for you. So for example, there might be things that do limit how much you can work or how far you could travel for work. So it could be health conditions or caring responsibilities. You've got school-aged children. You have to take them to school, you have to pick them up from school, or you have to be there on the holidays. Make sure your work coach knows that. Maybe you've got difficulties with reading, writing, maths. That could affect how you can work. Again, that might be, you might feel it's hard to talk about that, but if you can be honest with the work coach, that really helps. You're not being put in a position that you can't cope with. And also they may well have access to courses that would be really helpful for you that they can put you on. Are you being treated for problems with drugs or alcohol? It's important your work coach knows that, because that could affect how you can work at the moment. You might not be able to manage the commitment of a full-time job. Also, if you're homeless, it's important that your work coach knows that. So tell them, try and be honest so that you don't get in a position of being sanctioned for something that's really not your fault and not something that you can, that you could have accounted for. Another thing to bear in mind that catches you out is if something changes in your life, it's really important that you tell the DWP as soon as possible, and that you tell them in the correct way. So things that count as change in circumstances are things like stopping a job, starting a job, having a baby, moving in with a partner, starting to care for a child or a person with a disability, moving house, changing your bank, your rent going up or down, or changes to a health condition. These are just some of the things that it's important you tell them as soon as possible. And it's also important how you tell them. You might think, oh, I'll just write it on my online journal, that'll be fine, but it's not. They have a section on the Universal Credit account called Reporting a Change in Circumstances, and it's important that you click that box and you fill that in, explaining what's happened, when it happened, and then that will be recorded. If you have any problems with that, then write a message on your journal as well, explaining why you might have found it difficult, but it should be fairly straightforward. I mean, the actual account page is quite clear and quite user-friendly, which is good. So just make sure you do it the way they want you to do it in terms of telling them of changes. If in doubt, tell them. Now, sanctions, which I've mentioned a few times already. This is when your money can be cut, stopped for varying periods of time if the work coach believes that you have done something, you've broken your claimant commitment. And it can be things like not turning up for appointments, not going to job interviews, them believing you're not looking for work hard enough, or those are the sorts of things that would be considered as breaking the claimant commitment, and then they can sanction you. Now, if you feel that a sanction is unfair because you maybe didn't turn up to an appointment but you had a really good reason why you couldn't get to that appointment, then you can do a thing called a mandatory reconsideration, which is a bit of a mouthful. Basically means you're appealing, challenging the decision. It's not as complicated as it sounds. Citizens Advice Group's got a really good guide on how you do a mandatory reconsideration, so how you challenge a sanction. Definitely do it if you think this was unfair. Do challenge it, because in an enormous number of cases they reverse their sanction. So overall, it's, I'd say, one of the main thing that makes making a universal credit account run smoothly is communication. Trying to build a good relationship with your work coach, because they have a lot of power, and if you are open and honest and you communicate a lot with them, that can help them feel sort of confident that you're doing what you should be doing, that you are, if you're not doing something, there's a good reason why you can't do it. Things change, life changes, so tell them. Ask questions if you're not sure about something. The journal's really good actually, because it gives you a paper trail of what's happening, what you've asked about, what you've said, what you've done. So that can be helpful if there's any challenges along the line. And if a decision is unfair you feel, then do challenge it. Check your online journal a lot. If they send you a message and want you to do something, you should also get either a text or an email telling you there's something in your journal you need to give attention to. Keep the journal up to date, keep adding things on it so that they know that you're doing what you're doing. And if there's complications, things go wrong, you are not alone. There is help out there from local advice organisations which can really help you challenge decisions or sort out something complicated. So ones that you could go to in Lambeth are Brixton Advice Centre, Citizens Advice Bureau, who can also help you with web chats and on the phone, and Centre 70. At the time of doing this video, people are doing email, phone calls, not face-to-face, but I'm sure we'll get back to face-to-face appointments when we can. Thank you for watching. I hope that was helpful. If you've got any questions or comments or things you'd like us to cover, then do get in touch at the numbers on the slide. And we'll be doing more films on writing a budget and quick ways to cut costs. Thank you.